Trudeau has backed down. This decision came very suddenly. It was unexpected, at least by me. It is somewhat relieving, although I think it would be naive to assume, oh, okay, well, everything ends here, everything's backing down. After all, the Emergencies Act declaration only occurred, a week or two ago. Things were bad before that, and so now we're just back to the way things were a couple weeks ago. It's not like it's a real victory for people who, want freedom in Canada. The Emergencies Act, the way it works is that after the PM declares it, it has to be approved by the Parliament. It was supposed to be, and it passed the House of Commons by a pretty decent margin. I think it was like 185 to 150 something. And then it was making its way to the Senate, where it has not yet come to a vote before Trudeau just withdrew it. So the obvious thing to suspect here is either the Senate whip told Trudeau we don't have the votes, one, or two, Trudeau got some very bad internal polling, which showed that essentially the people of Canada think he's a dictator, and he would get walloped, in a hypothetical election. It's one of those two things, or both. But frankly, all of the polling that's been put out in Canadian media has, supposed to, told us that, oh, well, the people of Canada, overwhelmingly support Trudeau doing this. In fact, they think that he's just being too soft on the protesters. That's the real issue. That's Trudeau's real problem, is that he's not being tough enough. And so he needs to throw more people in prison without bail for the crime of honking their horns. And so it may have actually been that they just didn't have the votes in the Senate. I don't know. We'll probably know in the next couple of days. There'll probably be some leaks or rumors at the very least, which detail which give us, I shouldn't say that, which confirm what Trudeau's motivation was, but give us an idea at what might have motivated him to do this. Now, it's pretty funny because all these people out in the House of Commons, when they were making the case in that chamber, they wanted to ratify this because they said, oh, well, see, even though the truckers are cleared out, we cracked their skulls over the weekend, we still got to pass this because, there could be another trucker convoy. There could be more people protesting these measures, and we have to tamp down on far-right extremism. And so we are going to have to just suspend civil liberties indefinitely. That was basically the attitude of the Liberal Party and also the New Democratic Party, which is supposed to be sort of the real lefties in Canada, the ones who stand up for civil liberties when the libs are trying to take them away. The people who call the libs wolves in sheep's clothing. Back in 1970, when Pierre Trudeau, Justin's father, invoked this same act and suspended civil liberties and started rounding up dissidents and throwing them in prison, the NDP back then attacked Trudeau from the left and opposed this strongly. But now all the Liberal MPs and all the NDP MPs have exposed themselves as Trudeau toadies who just would go along with anything that the leader says. They are people who don't believe in anything. And, maybe that will hurt them in the future a little bit, but the modern left, frankly, rewards that kind of behavior much more than they punish it. So all in all, what I interpret this as meaning is that for a while there, it seemed like Canada was going in the opposite direction of the world. The world had been trending away from these kinds of restrictions, been moving back towards a state of normalcy. That was the trend. It's not that everywhere is back to pre-2020 freedoms, but they're going in that direction. Things are not getting worse. Things have been getting better all around the world. And Canada was an exception to that, where things seem to be getting worse. Trudeau rescinding this, to me, confirms that they have been unable to buck the trend, and that Trudeau does not have the ability, political capital, the will, whatever you want to call it, in order to continue the march towards tyranny at this time, at this very moment. Because it was clear, I mean, everything Chrystia Freeland, obviously, she's a big, high-ranking Davos politician. She worked for the Financial Times, so she's a journalist. Just everything. She was the biographer of George Soros, and she was the one really in charge of all this, laying out all this stuff and talking about how, we're going to, financially, we're gonna bring sanctions, the sanction regime that we impose on countries like Russia and Iran and North Korea, and we're going to impose them on domestic citizens. And this was already, they were rolling it out. And then now all of a sudden Trudeau came out and said, yeah, well, just kidding. That to me says that the experiment has already failed and was going to fail. That they were unable to bring it out at this time. That's all it is. Because this is not something that is specific to this situation. This situation was an excuse to bring out these measures that they've been planning and had in their back pocket for quite some time. Just like a lot of people warned in the early 2000s, the war on terror was going to come home to America or other countries. And they were going to start, treating us like the terrorists. That has come to pass. The sanction regime, which has replaced warfare to a certain extent in the world, is going to come home as well. I can't remember who it was, but somebody pointed out the other day, when they first started talking about the Great Reset, it was supposed to be, like Agenda 2050. Then it became Agenda 2030. Then it became Agenda 2020. They tried to bring all this stuff forward as much as they could. And I think that they have all these things that they plan on imposing on us. And they're throwing it as much spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And whenever it doesn't stick, they'll throw back, a few years later. But for right now, while they have the opportunity, they're trying to see what they can get through. And what Canada has been trying to do with seizing bank accounts, I think might have been a bridge too far. Now, that doesn't mean it's gone forever. It means it's gone for this week. They're going to look for another excuse to bring this back. Because they're not apologizing. They're not saying we were wrong. All they're saying is, yeah, that emergency thing, the emergency's over now, so we can stop now. And I don't know that they're going to give back the bank accounts of the people they've already seized. They didn't say that at all. But I think this means that they will stop seizing new bank accounts. And as I said before, it wasn't just bank accounts. It was all financial services, which, would mean getting a loan, having a credit card, investing, a brokerage account. All of that would get wiped out. I think now they're going to put that on hold. Because if it had worked in Canada and they'd gotten away with it, no doubt that would have been brought to the rest of the world. Now I think, Canada was the guinea pig. If Trudeau's pulling back already, it means they're not going to do this everywhere else. They're going to pull back for a little bit and say, you know what, we need to take a time out, and we need to find a better excuse to do this at a different time. So this is not a victory by any means for freedom. It's not what we're seeing here. This is an armistice. This is a pause. That's all this is. All of this stuff will be back. If they could today, they would implement these measures and say, hey, we're going to seize the bank account of anyone who's not sufficiently green. If you get caught building a bonfire in your backyard, that's emitting carbon. We're gonna seize your bank account, and you're gonna be done. They do that if they can. And I use the global warming stuff because that's their favorite excuse. Because it's it's the easiest. It's a great catch-all, an excuse to just completely control every aspect of human life. Unfortunately, I think that Canadians, because they came up to the brink. And they turned around. I think that people will go, oh, see, the government didn't really do any of that terrible stuff, except for the stuff they already did. But we didn't turn into, a 40-year dictatorship. It's only lasted 2 years so far. Or they'll say, well, that was all provincial stuff mostly. And so, if you want to argue the Trudeau dictatorship only lasted a week or two. See, look, Trudeau gave up his own powers. See, that's proof that the Emergencies Act worked and that he's a great person. See, because he seized all these powers and then he gave it up. He's so magnanimous, just like George Washington. Except George Washington is a racist slaveholder who's terrible. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.